April 14, 1945. Friedrichsroda, Germany. The Third Reich is collapsing. The rumble of General Patton's tanks can be heard in the distance. Soldiers of the 3rd U.S. Army are sweeping through the Thuringian forest looking for resistance. They expect to find Tiger tanks, artillery, or perhaps terrified infantry. Instead, inside a nondescript maintenance facility, they find something that stops them dead in their tracks. It doesn't look like a weapon of war. It doesn't look like anything made on Earth in the 1940s. It has no tail. It has no fuselage. It is simply a giant, ominous V shape, coated in a strange charcoal-colored paint. It looks like a boomerang thrown by a giant. The American soldiers call their commanders. Intelligence officers arrive. They walk around the machine, touching its smooth wooden skin, staring into the gaping intakes of its jet engines. They realized they were looking at the future. This was the Horten Ho 29, the world's first jet-powered flying wing. A machine designed to fly at 600 miles per hour, carry a massive bomb load, and, according to legend, remain invisible to Allied radar. Decades later, looking at the B-2 stealth bomber, we have to ask the chilling question: how close did Nazi Germany come to unleashing this weapon? And if they had succeeded, would the outcome of the war have changed? To understand this machine, we must understand the desperation that birthed it. By 1943, the sky over Germany belonged to the Allies. By day, American B-17s blotted out the sun. By night, British Lancasters turned cities into ash. Hermann Goering, the head of the Luftwaffe, was furious. His fighters were too slow. His interceptors lacked range. He needed a miracle. He issued a challenge to the German aviation industry. It was called the 3x1000 requirement. He demanded a plane that could carry 1,000 kilograms of bombs, fly 1,000 kilometers deep into enemy territory, and reach a speed of 1,000 kilometers per hour. It was an impossible request. The laws of physics in 1943 said you could have speed or you could have range, but you couldn't have both. To go fast, you needed big engines, which burned fuel quickly, reducing range. To go far, you needed lots of fuel, which added weight, reducing speed. Germany's top designers, Messerschmitt, Focke-Wulf, Heinkel, scoffed at the idea. They said it couldn't be done. But two brothers operating on the fringes of the establishment whispered that it could. Meet Reimar and Walter Horten. They were not typical engineers. They were dreamers, obsessed with a single, radical idea: the flying wing. Reimar Horten, the younger brother, was a mathematical genius. He didn't look at an airplane the way other people did. When he looked at a Messerschmitt Bf-109 or a Spitfire, he didn't see a beautiful machine. He saw waste. He saw inefficiency. He looked at the fuselage, the body of the plane, and asked, why is it there? It creates drag, but it produces no lift. He looked at the tail fin and the rudder. Why are they there? They are just heavy stabilizers dragging through the air. Reimar called this parasitic drag. He believed that a perfect airplane should be only a wing. No tail, no fuselage, no vertical stabilizer, just a pure lifting surface cutting through the sky. If you could eliminate the parasitic drag of the tail and body, Reimar calculated you could increase range by 40% using the same amount of fuel. You could fly faster with smaller engines. It was the holy grail of aerodynamics. But there was a problem, a big one. Without a tail, a plane is inherently unstable. It wants to flip over. It wants to spin. For decades, pilots who tried to fly tailless aircraft usually ended up in a smoking hole in the ground. Reimar solved this with brilliant mathematics. He developed something called the bell-shaped lift distribution. By twisting the wingtips slightly downwards, a technique called washout, he made the wingtips act as stabilizers. It was a complex aerodynamic trick that mimicked the flight of a bird. While other designers were building metal boxes, the Horten brothers were building gliders that flew like albatrosses. And in 1943, they took their glider designs, strapped two jet engines to them, and presented the HO-229 to Hermann Göring. Göring, desperate for a win, authorized the project immediately. He gave it the designation Sonderkommando 9. It was top secret. It received the highest priority rating in the Reich. But getting the green light was the easy part. Building the machine in a collapsing country was a nightmare. Look beneath the skin of the H-229 and you find a contradiction. It was a futuristic design built with medieval materials. By 1944, Germany was running out of strategic metals. Aluminum was precious, so Reimar Horten designed the plane to be built out of the one thing Germany still had plenty of: trees. The center section was a welded steel tube framework, tough and rugged, but the massive wings, spanning 55 feet, were made almost entirely of plywood. Layers of wood were glued together using a special mixture of sawdust and charcoal. Critics called it the wooden fighter. They thought it was flimsy. They were wrong. The plywood construction was incredibly strong and rigid. It was also smooth. Unlike metal planes, which were covered in thousands of rivets that disturbed the airflow, the wooden skin of the H-229 was polished and varnished until it was as smooth as glass. This smoothness was critical for speed, but ironically, the use of wood and glue would later spark the biggest controversy surrounding this aircraft: the stealth debate. We will get to that in a moment. The heart of the beast was a pair of Junkers JUMO-004B turbojets. These were the same engines powering the Messerschmitt Me-262, but fitting them into a flying wing was an engineering headache. Horten buried the engines deep inside the fuselage to reduce drag. This created a massive heat problem. You have a 1,000-degree jet exhaust sitting inches away from a wooden airframe and fuel tanks. The engineers had to design complex cooling jackets and heat shields just to keep the plane from catching fire on the runway. For the pilot, sitting in the H-229 was like sitting on the tip of a spear. The cockpit was pushed far forward. Visibility was incredible, panoramic views of the sky. But there was no tail to look back at, no reference point. And there was another danger. In a flying wing, there is very little structure in front of you. In a crash, you are the crumple zone. The landing gear was a massive tricycle arrangement taken from a heavy bomber, designed to hold the nose high for takeoff. It was ugly, but it worked. February 1945. The prototype, known as the HIX-V2, was finally ready for flight testing at Oranienburg. The test pilot was Lieutenant Erwin Ziller, a brave man who knew exactly how dangerous this experimental machine was. The first flight was a revelation. The flying wing didn't just fly, it glided. It was fast. In mock dogfights with the Me-262, the world's best fighter at the time, the Ho-229 reportedly outturned and out-accelerated it. Reimar Horten's math was correct. The lack of drag made it a hot rod, but the JUMO-004 engines were notoriously unreliable. On February 18, 1945, during a test flight, disaster struck. One of the engines failed mid-air. In a conventional plane with a tail, you can use the rudder to fight the asymmetrical thrust, but the Ho-229 had no rudder. Ziller fought the controls. He tried to dive to restart the engine. He tried to glide back to the runway. Witnesses on the ground saw the strange boomerang shape wobble, then enter a spiral dive. It slammed into the frozen earth just outside the airfield. Erwin Ziller was killed instantly. The prototype was destroyed. Normally, a fatal crash would halt a program, but the Nazis were out of time. They ignored the crash. They ordered the Gotha wagon factory to immediately begin mass production of the Ho-229V3, the armed version. They planned to build hundreds of them. They planned to swarm the Allied bomber fleets with these wooden ghosts. But history had other plans. Before the V3 could be finished, General Patton's tanks smashed through the factory gates. The Batwing was captured before it could ever fire a shot in anger. But the real story and the real mystery was only just beginning. After the war, Reimar Horten made a shocking claim. He stated that the wooden skin of the Han 229 was not just about saving weight. He claimed he had intentionally mixed charcoal dust, pure carbon, into the wood glue to absorb radar waves. It sounds like science fiction. In modern stealth technology, we use radar-absorbent material, RAM, to trap electromagnetic energy. Was a German glider designer using sawdust and charcoal to do the same thing in 1944? For decades, historians dismissed this as a myth. They said Reimar was just trying to rewrite history to impress his American captors. But the physics of the aircraft suggests something else entirely. Whether the charcoal glue worked or not, the shape of the Han 229 was undeniable. Radar works by bouncing radio waves off an object. Vertical surfaces like tail fins, fuselages, and propellers are like mirrors for radar. They reflect the signal straight back to the enemy. The Han 229 had no tail, it had no propellers, it had no vertical sides. It was a flat, smooth wing. To a radar operator in 1944, this aircraft wouldn't look like a fighter. It would look like a cloud, or a flock of birds, or perhaps nothing at all. The British chain-home radar system operated on low frequencies. Against these long wavelengths, the physical size of the Han 229 meant it would still be detected. But against the newer high-frequency microwave radars that the Allies were introducing for gun-laying and night fighting, the Han 229 would have been a ghost. But theories are not proof. To find the truth, we had to wait 60 years. In 2009, a team from Northrop Grumman, the creators of the B-2 stealth bomber, decided to solve the mystery once and for all. They went into the dusty archives, retrieved the original blueprints, and built a full-scale, non-flying replica of the Ho 229. They used the exact same materials, steel tubes, plywood, and, yes, the special charcoal glue mixture. They took this replica to a classified test range in the Mojave Desert and mounted it on a pole. Then they blasted it with World War II-era radar frequencies. The results were startling. The Ho 229 was not invisible in the modern sense. It didn't disappear like an F-22 Raptor, but it had a radar cross-section, RCS, that was significantly smaller than any other fighter of the war. Specifically, the frontal RCS was 40% smaller than a Messerschmitt Bf-109. This 40% reduction doesn't sound like total invisibility, but in the mathematics of war, it was a game changer. Here is the 20-minute rule. Defending against a standard bomber attack, British radar could detect the enemy at 100 miles, giving the RAF about 19 minutes to scramble their Spitfires and climb to intercept. But against the Ho 229, because of its smaller radar signature and its blistering speed of 600 miles per hour, the detection range would drop to 80 miles. The warning time would be cut from 19 minutes to just 8 minutes. 8 minutes is not enough time to scramble fighters. It's not enough time to climb to altitude. If the Ho 229 had attacked in 1945, it would have been over the target before the defenders even knew it was there. But the Horten H-22 fighter was just the beginning. Reimar Horten had a darker, grander vision. He was already working on the Horten H-18. This was a monster. A massive six-engine intercontinental bomber based on the same flying wing design. The goal was simple and terrifying: to fly from Germany to New York City, drop a payload, perhaps a radiological bomb or a primitive nuclear device, and return without refueling. The Nazis called it the America Bomber. Imagine a fleet of these massive, silent wings appearing over the east coast of the United States. No tail fins, minimal radar signature, flying faster than any American P-51 could catch. Fortunately for the world, this remained a paper dream. The war ended before the Horten brothers could build their masterpiece. But the blueprints survived, and they didn't stay in Germany. After the war, the captured Horten 229 V3 was boxed up and shipped to the United States as part of Operation Seahorse.
It disappeared into a government warehouse for decades. In America, another visionary named Jack Northrop had been trying to build flying wings since the 1940s. His designs, like the YB-49, failed because they were too unstable. Without computers, human pilots simply couldn't control a tailless plane. Jack Northrop died in 1981, but shortly before his death, he was given a classified clearance to see the Air Force's newest project. He was wheeled into a hangar, and they pulled back the curtain. He saw the B-2 Spirit. It was a flying wing, no tail, composite materials, the exact realization of the dream he and Reimar Horten had chased for 50 years. Tears rolled down the old man's face. He whispered, "Now I know why God has kept me alive this long." The lineage is unmistakable. The Horten 229 was the grandfather of the B-2. The Nazis had the aerodynamic shape right. They had the stealth concept right. They just lacked the computer technology, the fly-by-wire systems to make it stable. Today, the only surviving Horten HO-229 sits in the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum. It is a silent, rusting relic. It looks ancient, yet somehow it still looks more modern than the F-16s parked next to it. It serves as a chilling reminder of technical brilliance serving an evil cause. The HO-229 was a failure in war, but a triumph in engineering. It was the wrong plane for the wrong side at the wrong time. But make no mistake, the ghost of the Horten brothers is still flying today. Every time you see a B-2 Spirit or a B-21 Raider glide silently through the night, you are looking at the shadow of the Nazi flying wing. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more secret weapons of World War II, click this playlist right here. And tell us in the comments, if the war had lasted another year, do you think these wonder weapons would have saved the Third Reich? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dive history.